Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beetle Dustino coming at you again today with yet another video and yet another album cover artwork ranking videos of Paul McCartney this time. Of course, we've done the Beatles. I've done all the different segments on the Beatles. I've done the Paul McCartney in the 70s, and we're on to Paul McCartney in the 80s. So, of course, the next one will be in the 90s. I think that's how I'm kind of breaking it down here. I got to do by decades with Paul. Let's see how this all turns out after the intro. Yes, I got asked by a viewer to rank all the Beatles album artwork, including their solo careers. So I've been taking on this monumental task, and I've already got all the Beatles done, and I did everything, compilations, everything so far, compilations from the 70s, compilations from the 90s, so forth. And I've started on Paul McCartney's, and we last did the 70s era Paul McCartney. So I'm kind of breaking him down into eras is what I'm going with. So I'm doing all the compilations and everything from that. I'm not doing any like the promotional stuff, anything like that. However, there is kind of one that's kind of considered promotional, whatever, in this group here, just because I think it is a pretty key piece to most people's collections of Paul's, and I thought it was a decent album cover, so I thought I'd include it, even though it's really not an album. So you'll see what that is though when we get to it. But the 80s, really, there wasn't a lot. I was kind of surprised. It breaks down to 9 different album covers here, including all the compilations, live albums, and so forth, and main studio albums and that too. Really not a lot of live albums in this either. So let's get on with it though. So we got 9 different covers, and we'll start with number 9, number 9, number 9. And that is going to be Pipes of Peace. And I know this is a Linda McCartney photographed album cover, which, I mean, I give that total respect. Of course, the album came out October 31st of 1983. And I'm going to give it a little justice here because I do kind of include the gatefold, and really the album does stretch to the back too. So I'm going to open it up so you can see it fully open. As you know, I kind of tend to like the band or the man himself being on the cover. Well, they got his arm on the cover and his hand here, a little bit of his forearm and his hand. But the man himself doesn't appear until the back. And then it does have a gatefold, which is all right, showing the different members of the band and that in here. But yeah, I've never really... the album isn't great. The album cover isn't great. So, I mean, we got a lot of to live up to here, I guess. So that is where Pipes Piece is going to rank at number 9. Number 9, number 9, number 9. All right, enough of that. All right, let's move on to number 8 here. Hold on just a moment. And coming in at number 8 is going to be Chobba B CCCP, as my record's falling over there after I took it out of the slip case there. But the Russian album, I guess we'll just call it for simplicity. I remembered all the C's this time, though. Originally released October 31st, 1988, only in Russia, and I think this is a pretty genuine one because it's pretty floppy and real thin material on this. I couldn't find much on who is credited to this. The only thing I could find was Michael Ross was the cover designer, so I don't know who the photographer was. I'm assuming it was probably a Linda photo, but I'm not sure. There isn't a gatefold. I'll show you the back just real quick here. It's good. It's not, it is what it is, I guess, on this one. A picture of Paul, but it's so, the star thing over him and all that. It's really kind of hard to see him, and, all the little dots and that to kind of pixelate him out there. I don't know. It's bizarre. It's definitely memorable, I guess. Like, as soon as you say, Chobba B CCCCP, I'm thinking of this image, but it just, I don't know, compared to what else we got here, it's just not that great. And the 80s are a period of just not that great of albums, and I think the artwork also really didn't do a lot for them. Not saying this is totally bad. None of these are really bad, so don't get me wrong, even though we're at the bottom of the list here. All Paul McCartney album covers are great for what they are, and I'm never gonna put down the art But number 7 is Give My Regards to Broad Street. I think a lot of it is, you know, it is kind of the soundtrack album, so it is kind of making it like the movie poster in that. This originally came out, though, on October 22nd of 1984. All of his October releases back in the 80s. The last 2 were both Halloween releases. And it's Terry O'Neill did the cover photo. And then David Hagley, I believe I got, or Dagley. I can't tell my P from a D right now on my handwriting. I always am complaining about my own handwriting on this. Did the other sleeve photos. So I'm assuming the inner sleeve stuff. Roger Haggett and Annie Carlton, John Pash, Sandra Lehman all did the sleeve design, and Jeff Haypin did the layout cover lettering. So there we go. So that's all the kind of the credits there to who all made the artwork, what the artwork is. I wish I would have done this a little better when I was doing the Beatles ones. And I think it was Miss Condor Jr. was my commenter, my viewer that mentioned this. So this one does have a gatefold and everything too, and I'm going to kind of show this in the back there, which is just a lot of, you know, kind of images and scenes from the film. And there is a lot of just still photos here too, but most of it's, you know, based off of what was going on in the film, in the movie there. So but yeah, it just, I don't know, there's something about it. I wish Paul was more predominant instead of this, you know, figure thing here. You know, that would have been maybe a little better. I don't know just how I think about the album in general helps bring it down too, but yeah, I don't know. It's just my number 7. So I guess it isn't the bottom of the pile either, though. So and up next at number 6, faring fairly well for this type of album cover, considering how I've said in the past I prefer the band, or Paul McCartney in this case, being that we are pretty much solo stuff here, be on the cover. This one ranked pretty high, but it is just a very nice picture. It's a really nice, well done thing. I know Linda took the photo of it, and that is the inner sleeve was done by Bob Ludwig, and the cover concept painting was Brian Clark. But yeah, it is Flowers in the Dirt. I forgot to say that, originally released on June 5th of 1989. So by the late 80s, he was getting into June instead of October. There we go. All right. But yeah, I don't know. I've just always really liked this. It's just calming. It's very aesthetically well done. I really wish they would get the colored vinyl reissue going with this in it. I think this is one of the albums that would be one of the first to be reissued in that if they got it going, as it's one of the few of the archive collections that have been out there that haven't been in the colored vinyl reissue. And I think it would be really cool to kind of do this dark red with kind of some orange and yellow, kind of like splatter. I think it would just make a great colored vinyl, almost mimicking that with like a splatter vinyl. And no gatefold or anything. And it did mention the inner sleeve, which I was kind of surprised about, because the inner sleeve is just this yellow thing. I know there is the this too, which is just purple, but there is some, I guess there is some artwork on the back of this there, and some. Well, it's just writing on the inside there. So, I don't know. But it's a memorable enough cover that it's going, well, getting mid-pack, I guess, in this. Still towards the bottom, but I do really like this cover. It's a very nice cover. And the archive collection box on this with that kind of silky feel-in cover and that is really cool. So, this one's going to rank pretty high for these type of covers, I guess. It at least beat out ones with Paul actually on the cover. So, I guess there we go on that. And next up is the odd one I'm kind of including in. I'm sure everybody was kind of trying to figure out which one is Beatle Dustino talking about there. Well, it is the McCartney interview. I said I know Wikipedia lists this under like the promotional items and stuff, and this is coming in at number 5, so almost mid. But it is, you know, just a really cool picture of Paul, that, you know, telling you exactly what it is, and really good, you know, form there. And of course, it is a photo by Linda. This originally came out on December 4th of 1980 in the US, and not until February 23rd of 1981 in the UK. But yeah, the Paul McCartney interview, and it is, you know, released on Columbia and everything. I got my price tag from the record shop I got at Mill City Sound. Absolutely fantastic record shop. But why they put the price tag right on the record cover, I don't know. I suppose so people don't try to flip the tags on other stuff. But yeah, the McCartney interview. I was really kind of surprised where this came in. I knew I was going to include it once I got thinking about it, especially when I realized there was only like 8 albums at that point. I'm like, well, I want to at least get nearly 10. So, so 9, I guess, is where we're going to be at for the 80s on this. So, but yeah, McCartney interview at number 5. Coming in at number 4 will be the compilation, All the Best. Originally released on November 2nd of 1987. The photography is by Tim O'Sullivan. The photo inner spread is by Paul, Linda, and others. Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, and others. The illustrations are by loads of people, is what I got on my note. I don't know if that is, or if I just put that because there were too many to name. Art direction was Michael Ross, and Normal Service is the name of the company, I suppose. But yeah, I think this is, like I said, I like a nice picture of the band or the artist, and that is exactly what we got here. We got a nice picture of Paul sitting with his bass. The little artwork stuff for each of the songs, and yeah, that's going to be a little different on the US versus pretty much the rest of the world, as there's different tracks on the US versus the rest of the world on this. So you might see some changes there. This is a US copy, of course. And then here is the gatefold, which is, like I said, Linda McCartney, Paul McCartney, and others. And too many people to name for the artwork there. So there's the back. But I think, just a really nice, solid cover. I don't think it's going to hold up a lot with a lot of the stuff from the 70s, even the non photos of the band type covers. I think, McCartney, Venus and Mars, stuff like that is going to do pretty well up against this, because it is just a pretty plain shot of them, but it's a nice shot of them. So, and I guess this is another one, kind of like Pipes of Peace. Kind of the front spreads to the back there, so there we go. I'll show you that way too. But yeah, All the Best will be at number 4. And number 3, it's a very goofy photo, but boy, does it stick out in your head. And I don't know, it's goofy, but it sticks out in your head. It's memorable, and I like it. I don't know why. I do like it. But it's going to be McCartney 2, originally released on May 16th, 1980. Photography, of course, by Linda McCartney. Of course, again, like McCartney in 1970. I don't know why I'm showing you the spine, but there we go. And the back there, which is basically just a repeated image of the front. The gatefold isn't quite as good as McCartney's back from 1970. Kind of carrying on now when McCartney 3 comes out in 2020. I think they did a fantastic job on the gatefold in that one. I have no idea where that one's going to come out in the ranking here, though, but the gatefold is fantastic, but the cover art maybe not as much. But yeah, the only McCartney one that's going to rank, I think, this high, because it is the only one with an actual photo of him, even though I really like McCartney's cover. It's just kind of where it goes in terms of my personal feelings on it. And yeah, the gatefold isn't quite as strong, but it's still coming in at number 3. But the 80s really didn't have great artwork, though, so I guess that's just kind of where it's going to be on this. So those good and faithful Paul McCartney fans out there probably got to figure out what the last 2 are going to be, but what order are they going to be in? One, not a very loved album. The other one is a very loved album. One of the few of his very loved albums from the 80s. And let's see how it ranks out. What does the more loved album rank higher for the album art? Well, no. Tug of War is coming in at number 2. I do really like this cover. I love, it kind of showing the digital age kind of moving into, because of course this was one of his first albums he did all digital in the studio, yet on an analog form, physical media. Kind of representing is kind of weird, but I think it's really cool on that. I love him, just sitting there with the headphones on, even though he is kind of covered up by this blue and red stuff, and it's a black and white photo, but you do see him very well in it, and I think it's kind of a cool photo. I think it's kind of like he's listening to the album with you kind of thing, with the headphones on there, and that it's just a really well done album cover. Of course, it doesn't have a gatefold to help it out any, and even the back is pretty lacking on that. But of course, Tug of War came out April 26, 1982, as I've told you everything on why I like it. Photography by Linda McCartney, cover painting by Brian Clark again. Cover coordinator, he worked with Hypnosis again, which of course, with the Wings compilation announcement for 2025 that just got announced, he was working with Hypnosis again on that. So even into the 80s, he was working with Hypnosis and yet again on that. And it's also listed as Sync is another one. And then the cover concept was done by Brian Clark. There we go. Brian, your concept is quite good here. I like it. Number 2 in this ranking on that. So I think everybody should have number 1 figured out. And it is a great photo. I think it's one of my favorite photos of Paul and Linda. And of course, Paul and Linda, even though it is just a Paul McCartney album. So Paul and Linda on a Paul McCartney album, and it was just Paul on the Paul and Linda album. So how does that work out? But yeah, even though I think Linda is very much a big part of all of his solo stuff too, you know, while she was alive. So I guess I can't laugh too much at that, but still, it is just credited to Paul McCartney. But of course, it is press to play, originally released August 25th of 1986. Photography by George Hurrell, and stereo drawings by Paul McCartney. Which will be in the gatefold here. Really not much on the back, so see, as we're talking about those studio drawings, which is really cool. And another reason why I think this ranks so high for me, because I think this is really cool. Even though it doesn't really match the album cover, the music on the album also doesn't match the album cover. This would have been better for Kisses on the Bottom, wouldn't it? This, I think, is just really cool, showing the layout of kind of the stereo setup in the studio, where everything was. And I think that's cool that Paul drew this out and they used this on this. You know, I said the gatefold never is going to really affect too much on that, but that is, I think, what pushed this over the edge to be number 1, because it was a pretty strong kind of race there between this Tug of War and McCartney 2. So I've always just really liked this photograph. I've always really enjoyed this gatefold, even though it's really nothing to do with the band. You know, photos of the band. The back, yeah, it doesn't really have much going, but still, I think a really well done photo. And I know they used a really old camera to take this, a real vintage camera to take this image too, which I think is really cool, and kind of mimicking the old Hollywood imagery there with that. I know they were some old movie poster or something, or promo photo for a movie or something they were redoing. So I think that's pretty cool on that, and I think they did a great job on it, and it's just a really good picture of the two of them, and I really like it. So there we go, number 1 in my Paul McCartney 1980s album art cover ranking. So Ms. Condor Jr., thanks for encouraging me to do this, and I'm carrying it on. So of course, next up will be Paul in the 90s, which will include fireman stuff and classical stuff in there too. So, and then any of the compilations and live albums and stuff. And I think we got again about 10 or so albums on that. So it really worked out good that he was right around 10, or maybe just a little more or a little less in this case, kind of breaking it down by the decades there. So that will be up next, the 90s. All right. And then, of course, once I get the 90s done with Paul and the rest of Paul's done, I'll probably move on to, I might do John next. I think John does make sense to do next. And I've got a pretty good breakdown on his so far, kind of figured out. And I might end it with Ringo. And then eventually, like I said, I'm going to take the number 1 that I did in each category, and I'm going to do one big video with each of the number 1s and see who comes out on top of that. And you know, the bottom, I think it'll be interesting to see where the number 1s even rank amongst the other number 1s. So that's kind of the plan on this. And of course, like I always say, I always got to throw this disclaimer in these type of videos. This is, of course, my preference and my ranking. Yours is going to be totally different, and I wouldn't expect it to be the same. Just like I wouldn't expect you to say I'm totally wrong and whatnot because you think it should be this. No, that's your opinion. This is my opinion. I'm sure there's going to be people fairly similar to mine. Nobody's going to be exactly the same. And why would we watch these videos if we were exactly the same, right? Why would this be any fun if I told you exactly what you wanted to hear? You want to hear something slightly different for the, entertainment of it. There's no point watching this if we're all going to be the same. So, as I don't want to get too deep on that, as I say it on every single one of these videos, and I'm sure the same people are probably watching these videos, you're probably getting sick of hearing me say it. But yeah, I just got to throw that out there just to be clear. This is my opinion, and I want to hear what yours is. I want to hear what your ranking is, and none of us are going to go wrong any which way. This is all great artwork. A lot of people did a lot of hard work to do this, and none of it's bad. None of it is bad. Like I said, these all are just, any of them could interchange at any given moment, even in my opinion. So that's just how it is at the moment here for me. And like I said, you might have something totally different too, and maybe you might just say, oh yeah, he's got a point there on that. And you know, if you leave in the comment on what yours is, I might say, yeah, I see what your point is too. So there we go. All right. Now that we got all that out of the way and kind of gave you the heads up on what's in the future, I'm going to get fully signing out. Before I do that, though, once again, I want to thank all my subscribers, and thanks to any new subscribers. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos coming out. Also, please give the video a like if you liked it. And like I always say, if you stuck around to this point, you must like it. So please give it a like and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know, like I said, your thought on the ranking here. Where would you put these albums in your ranking? Did I leave something out? I don't think I did. I know I'm not doing like the picture sleeve singles and stuff like that, and maybe I might do a episode on that another day, maybe like 12-inch single stuff. Because as I was digging for that Paul McCartney interview, I wasn't remembering where I left it. It was with my 12-inch singles. I don't know why I had it there, but and I saw those, and I'm like, oh yeah, these got some cool artwork too. So maybe someday I might do that. I don't know if I'll include it in the overall ranking. We're just trying to do the main albums in the overall ranking, not those. So we'll see how it all comes out, though. But anyways, I'm going to get fully signing out. I am Beetle Dustino, signing out.